It is the middle of the night during World War II. The German soldiers started hearing something above them. Not loud, not fast, just quiet. Then the engine cuts. Bombs fall, and by the time they react, the plane is already gone. They called them the Night Witches. It is the middle of the night over the Eastern Front during World War II. The sky is completely dark. There are no navigation lights, no radio chatter, only wind and distance. When a sound appears, not loud, not fast, just a slow wooden aircraft moving through the night. Moments later, the engine shuts off. The plane glides towards its target. A few seconds later, bomb falls. By the time German soldiers react, the aircraft is already gone. They called them the Night Witches. The story takes place during World War II, a global conflict from 1939 to 1945. On the Eastern Front, Nazi Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 created one of the largest and most brutal military fronts in history. Entire cities were destroyed. Millions are killed. The Soviet Union is forced into rapid mobilization, and every available resource is pushed into the war efforts, including women. At this time, women are not commonly allowed in combat aviation roles in most countries, but in the Soviet Union, that began to change because of one person. Marina Razkova was one of the most famous pilots in the Soviet Union before the war. She held national records and was widely respected. When Germany invades, she receives thousands of letters from women asking to serve in combat roles. She brings those requests directly to Soviet leadership. Her argument is simple: the country needs pilots, and women are willing to fly. By the late 1941, the Soviet Union created 3 female aircraft regiments. One of them became the 588th Night Bomber Regiments, later renamed the 46th Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiments. This unit will become known as the Night Witches. The women who joined were extremely young, anywhere between 17 and 23-year-olds. Some had been students, others worked in factories or office jobs. Most had no combat experience and very limited flying hours before the war. Their training was rushed because the Soviet Union needed pilots immediately. They were trained not for perfection, but for survival and efficiency under pressure. They were assigned to Polyg-Arpov PO-2 aircraft. These planes were made of wooden canvas and originally designed in the 1920s for training and agricultural spraying. They were slow, fragile, and completely outdated for modern combat. The aircraft had no radar, no radio communication, no armor, and no fixed machine guns. The crews sometimes carried small personal weapons, but they offered no real protection in combat. Parachutes were inconsistently available, especially early in the war, depending on supply conditions. Despite these limitations, the regiments developed a highly effective combat strategy based on stealth. Each mission involved 2 people, a pilot and a navigator. They flew only at night to reduce detection. They stayed at a very low altitude, often just above treetop level, to avoid radar and searchlight. Their most important tactic came during the approach. As they neared a target, pilots would shut off the engine completely. The aircraft would transition into a silent glide, drifting through the air with almost no sound. This made them extremely difficult to detect, especially in the chaos of nighttime combat. One of the most experienced pilots in the regiment was not Zita. She flew more than 800 combat missions during the war. On some nights, she completed over 10 sorties in a single shift. After landing, this created an exhausting cycle. Just fly, land, reload, fly again. Her craft often returned damaged, sometimes with visible bullet holes in the fabric wings. But she continues operating under constant pressure. Their typical missions were extremely dangerous from start to finish. The planes took off in darkness, often in freezing temperatures. Navigation was done with basic maps, compasses, and visual landmarks. There are no electric systems to assist them. German forces quickly learned to respond. Searchlights swept the sky. Anti-aircraft gunfires into suspected flight paths. Fighter planes were deployed specifically to intercept Soviet aircraft, while the PO-2 was slow, which seems like a disadvantage. It created an unusual effect in the combat. German fighters sometimes had difficulty engaging them because they had to slow down so much that they were stalling. However, once the night witches were detected, they were still highly vulnerable. Many crews were shot down throughout the war. Every mission carried real risk. To understand their impact, it is important to look at scale. By the end of World War II, the Night Witches had flown more than 23,000 combat sorties. They dropped thousands of tons of bombs on German positions, rails lines, and supply depots. The regiment became one of the most effective all-female combat aviation unit in the Soviet Air Force. 32 members were awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, one of the highest military honors in the country. After the war ended in 1945, most members of the regiment left military service. Many returned to ordinary civilian lives as teachers, engineers, or workers. Unlike many male combat units, their story did not receive any widespread international attention at the time. For decades, their contributions remained relatively unknown outside of the Soviet Union. Today, the Night Witches are remembered as a rare example of women serving in direct combat aviation roles during World War II. Their story shows how necessity during war led to women being placed in extreme conditions where they proved capable, disciplined, and effective. A wooden aircraft in the night sky, a silent glide over enemy lines, and young women flying mission after mission in the dark. One of the most intense parts of the Night Witches. Operations was what a single mission actually felt like from start to finish. A plane takes off in complete darkness. There are no runway lights to guide it. The engine is loud at first, vibrating through the wooden frame as the aircraft climbs into the night sky. Inside the cockpit, there is no modern technology, no navigation system, just a map, a compass, and memory. The navigator leans forward, watching the ground through faint shadows. River forests and broken roads are used as a reference point. If they drift even slightly off course, they risk flying directly into enemy fire or missing the target completely. As they approach enemy territory, the silence becomes heavier. Searchlights begin sweeping across the ground below. Each beam moves slowly, scanning for movements in the sky. If a light catches them, everything changes in seconds. Anti-aircraft guns begin firing upward into the dark. Explosions flash below them. The plane shakes as shock waves move through the air. But the pilots do not turn back easily. They continue forward, timing everything carefully. Then comes the most important moment. The engine shuts off. Suddenly there's no sound except wind. The aircraft glides forward, almost invisible in the night sky. The crew waits in silence, counting seconds, watching the ground approach. Then the bombs are released, a quick drop, a shift in weight, and then immediate escape into darkness. Only after that do they restart the engine and climb away, hoping they have not been seen. And then they do it again, sometimes once a night, sometimes 10 or more times. Each mission is the same pattern: take off, navigate, survive, drop, return, repeat. This repetition is what defined their war. Not a single moment of heroism, but hundreds of nights where survival itself was the achievement. And that is the story of the Night Witches.